In this video, I'm going to tell you the story about how I found my first job in IT, and I'm going to give you my top tips on how to find your first job in IT and some action steps that you can take right now. My name is Justin, and I'll be your IT career coach. In this channel, I want to help you start and grow a career in IT into something you love and create the success you want. Let's get into it. There's really no easy way to say this, but finding your first job in IT is also probably going to be the hardest job for you to find. It's kind of ironic that finding your beginner job in IT is the hardest, but this is really just because you haven't been established in the industry and you probably don't know many or any people at all that work in the IT industry. But don't let this get you down. Don't let this stop you. I have some great news for you, and that is that you are in demand. Employers are looking for IT workers, and the industry is constantly growing. Let me show you what I mean when I say that you are in demand. Let's take a look together. If I go to Indeed.com, and you can use whatever job search you want, I'm just happen to be on Indeed.com, and I type in help desk in the United States. Look at this. I've found 84,265 jobs. So if you're worried about whether or not there's a job for you, trust me, there is. Before you apply for a job, you need to go find a job that you want to apply for. And that takes me to my tip number one. There are many different job titles. Some companies will say help desk, and other companies might call it a help desk technician. And some companies might not use the word help desk at all. They might say service technician or level 1 technician or computer support. So make sure to broaden your search and use some of the terms I'm going to put here on the screen for you. As you start to search for these job descriptions, other job titles might come up, and just be curious and start to use those as well. While you're looking at some of the job descriptions, you may run into some different technologies that you've never heard of, which brings me to my tip number two. Learn the terminology. In IT, we use a lot of different terms and acronyms, and sometimes we even call the same thing multiple terms or multiple acronyms. Just because you see a term that you don't know or something you've never heard of doesn't mean that you're not qualified to do the job. Don't let this deter you. Instead, use this as an opportunity to learn. For example, let's say you're doing your job search and you find a job posting that says that you should have experience with some sort of specific industry software, and then they list like a long list of different software names that you've never heard of. If you don't know what this software is, you might be thinking, how can I even apply for this job, right? Use this as an opportunity to put on your detective hat and do some Googling and find out what the software is. Maybe you can get on YouTube and find videos on how to use it and what it's used for. Learn as much as you can about the software, because that way if you end up in an interview and then they ask you if you have experience with this, instead of just saying, oh, I've never heard of this software, I don't know anything about it, you can say, I don't have hands-on experience with the software, but I'm very familiar with it, I know a lot about it, and I'm confident that I can learn how to support it in very little effort, or something like that. It's going to come across much better. Learning technical terminology and new acronyms and different software and systems is basically always going to happen in your career in IT, so just get used to it. It's going to always be there. Let's move on to my search tip number three. Don't worry about the job requirements. Many employers are going to post entry-level jobs with all sorts of requirements that you don't necessarily have to meet. For example, I've seen companies that will post a quote entry-level job and then also require 1 to 2 years of experience. If they're requiring 1 to 2 years of experience, it's not an entry-level job. So this is one of those things where you can just kind of ignore the fact that they said that and apply anyway. Now let's say you applied for that job and you do get to an interview and somebody asks you if you have 1 to 2 years of experience. Don't lie and say that you did. Never lie. I shouldn't have to say that. Just tell them about the experience that you do have. Tell them about the customer service experience you might have or the hands-on experience that you have. And just be confident that if they brought you in for an interview, then they are interested in talking to you. My point here is that if you see something that's posted in a job requirement that you don't meet, but you feel confident that you can do the job, then just apply for the job anyway. You don't really have anything to lose. The next thing I want to talk about is the different type of employment situations And this is going to bring me to my tip number 4. Understand the situation. What do I mean by this? Traditionally, most people think of a job situation as a company hiring you to join their team and do a job. You get hired by the company, you're given a job title, and now you're just part of the team. This is called a direct hire, and this is one way you could be employed. But in IT, you'll also see a couple of other employment situations. For example, you could be a contract employee. A contract employee is usually hired by a third party who's helping a company, which is their customer, fill an empty spot in their IT department for a temporary amount of time. If you get hired as a contract employee, your pay might be seemingly a lot higher, but this comes at a disadvantage of not having certain benefits such as healthcare and dental care, or maybe retirement planning or long-term employment. Your terms are negotiated up front, and usually the contract is for a 3-month to maybe at most a year-long employment. This might be something you're interested in, but honestly, I don't think that contract employment is really the best for an entry-level job in IT. In my experience, I've found that entry-level contract employees are commonly taken advantage of, overworked, and easily let go. This can also make finding your second job almost as hard as finding your first job because, again, you were under a temporary contract, now you're unemployed, you're trying to find new work, you don't know when you're going to find it. It's just a really tough situation to be in, and it's hard to grow a career from there. Another and my favorite type of an employment situation is to work for a service provider. This is kind of a mix of being working as a direct hire and working for a contractor. It's a little bit in the middle. You would be directly hired by a service provider, or sometimes they're called managed service providers, and you might see the acronym MSP. And in this situation, it's kind of the best of both worlds because you get the benefits of getting a direct hire by working for the service provider, but you also get the dynamics of working for multiple clients and seeing different environments. The advantage here is that when the contract is up with a customer, it's not your responsibility to go find a new contract. This is up to the service provider. It's their job to find the work for you. The reason why I like working for a service provider is because it's going to give you exposure to many different clients, many different technologies, and it's going to help you grow your skill set a lot faster. This will also give you the opportunity to build relationships quickly as well. You will work with and meet a lot of different people, and this is always a good thing. Generally speaking, you can also make a pretty good salary working for a service provider. You can typically expect the pay to be somewhere in between being a direct hire and being a contract employee. And if you're a fast learner, you're going to be able to grow your career really quickly as well. Service providers are very vested in their employees. Typically, service providers will give you a lot of opportunities to learn new technologies, and they're going to pay for your education and they're going to pay for your certifications because they're vested in you becoming more valuable as well. It's a win-win. So to summarize this, there's typically 3 employment situations in IT. One is the traditional direct hire. This is good if you're looking for a long-term stable working environment, you really like the company maybe that you're going to be working for, and it's someplace that you want to stay for a long time and be settled in. Second is the contract. This is the riskiest, but if you're more entrepreneurial and you're willing to take on the risk, you can make a great career doing contract work. But again, I just don't really recommend this as your entry-level job into IT. And number 3 is the service provider. This is great if you want something that's dynamic and fast-paced. This will give you exposure to many different customers or clients, as well as different infrastructures and different technologies that you can learn about. Working for a service provider is great if you love taking on challenges, if you're a quick learner, and you like working in a fast-paced and dynamic environment. In my opinion, working for a service provider is also the best way to grow and create success in your career over a long term and make a lot more money. Okay, so where did we leave off? We've talked about how to search for a job and what to look for. A lot of people will say that finding your first job is a numbers game, meaning that the more jobs you apply for, then the more interviews you might get and the more likely it is for you to get a job. And while that might be kind of true, it also brings me to my fifth tip. Search and apply with intention. So what do I mean by this? Don't go and just apply for every single job that you find. Sure, you could go send your resume to 500 different employees. And yeah, maybe that's gonna land you a few more interviews, but then you end up getting called in for interviews with companies that maybe you don't know anything about, and they might be somewhere you don't really want to commute, and they're gonna give you too little pay, and you just end up in a situation that you're not sure you want to be in. Figure out what type of job you want or what kind of company you want to work for. And then find those companies online and go see if they're hiring. And like I said, do this with intention. Learn as much as you can about the companies. After all, they could be your potential employer. You should be curious about who they are and what they do. Basically, you still want to try to find as many potential companies to work for. It's still a little bit of a numbers game, but you want to find the companies that you're actually genuinely interested and passionate about working for them. And this is going to go a long way because this will come across in your communications with the company. If they bring you in for an interview, your passion and your genuine interest in that company is going to be noticed, and it's going to go a long way. Don't give up. Timing is a huge factor as well. As I'm filming this video, we are coming up on the holiday season. A lot of hiring activities with companies tend to slow down in November and December. For example, when I did my search earlier online, I found something like 84,000 different open jobs in the United States for help desk. But I bet if we did this search again in the spring, we might even see double the results. So my point here is just don't give up because you can't find the perfect job or find the job that you want or find the perfect fit. The seasons change, hiring cycles change, and just keep searching every week. Go out and look and see if anybody's posting new jobs, and if you see something you're interested in, then go for it. Just don't give up. Who you know matters. My first job in IT was kind of an entrepreneurial venture. I was picking up little small jobs, kind of like what I called contract employment. And it was usually with little mom and pop shops around town. And it was just people that I knew, or maybe people that my dad knew. And I would come and help them set up their computers, and I would set up their networks. And I did this while I was still in high school. And it was cool, but it really wasn't enough to be a full-time job. So I was still working my customer service job while I did these on the side, but I really wanted to find a service provider that I could get a real full-time job doing IT with them. Now, this was back in like 1998 or 1999, and the internet was around, but this was really before companies started posting their job openings on their website. Everything was still kind of new, and usually companies didn't do that. So today you have a huge advantage because every company will post job openings on their website. And if there's a company that you're interested in working for, then just go to the website and check out their careers page and see if there's any openings. For me, it was all just word of mouth and asking around. And I lived in a small town, and there were really only a couple of IT companies, like service provider companies at the time. I did get an interview with one of those companies because one of my best friends was working for one of the service providers. See, this is where I talk about it's all about who you know. My best friend works for the company. They came and they brought me in for an interview, and it was partly because of his recommendation. I didn't actually end up getting the job because I was too entry level, and they were looking to hire a more senior level technician or a engineer, systems engineer, and I just really wasn't qualified for the job. But the fact that I got the interview wasn't because I called them, it was because of the connection that I had with my friend. Well, a few months later, my friend knew this guy that he used to work with. This guy was starting his own IT services company, and he asked my friend if he would come and work for him. My friend wasn't actually interested in leaving the company that he was working for because he felt it was more stable, and he had been with the company for a long time, and he really liked being there. But he did refer me to the guy that was starting a new company, and long story short, I ended up getting the job. This was my real in into the IT industry. I was his first employee, and over the course of about 10 years, we grew to about 20 employees. Before this, I always thought that finding my first job was just going to be a lot of work, pounding the pavement, making calls and sending out resumes, trying to land that interview. But this made me realize that the people you know and the relationships you have really have a huge impact on your ability to find a job. I'm not saying that you can't get a job without having any connections or without knowing anybody, but it honestly is uncommon. I have landed every single job that I've gotten because of a referral from a friend or a colleague, except for one. And that one was kind of a referral anyway, but it was just a connection that I made with somebody else, and then he introduced me to somebody else. And as you can see, this is all about referrals and introductions and knowing people. I asked a bunch of my friends that are in the industry as well, how many of their jobs did they land without any referral or without knowing anybody that connected them to anybody else, and pretty much all of them said none except for one. So if having the connections and building relationships is important in IT, again, we run into like a catch-22, which is how do you build relationships in the industry that you have no experience in? So here's what you do. You want to go onto Google and you're going to look for what we call user groups, or just look for any type of tech conferences, or sometimes they're called networking events, but that term isn't used as much anymore. And you're going to want to search for, like, for example, search for user groups in your closest major city. You should start getting results for things like Windows user groups or Linux user groups or VMware user groups or maybe Cisco user groups. You're going to want to go to these events because this is a great place for you to meet the people that will potentially be your peers in the industry. Start making friends with these people and, start putting yourself out there that you're looking to get a job in the industry, and, ask them where they work and what do they like about working there. And eventually this might lead to a job for you. Additionally, there might be some tech conferences in the major city near you. Microsoft has big events, and a lot of the other vendors like VMware or Cisco or anybody has these events. And sometimes there's an entrance fee, but it's really worth it to go because you can go learn about what they're doing with the technology, and this will give you an opportunity to walk around some of the other booths and talk to people and learn what those companies do. And there's always some different companies that are sponsoring these events where you can just meet a lot of new people. Be willing to relocate. I understand that not everybody can just pick up and move to a new city or a new state in order to find a job. And I would never recommend anybody go move to a new state before they have landed their job, just on a whim. I mean, if you have a family and you're really settled into a community, it's really hard to just say, I'm going to pick up and move. And that's understandable. This might be a little bit more of a restriction for you, and you might have to find a job closer to where you live. But if you're young or you're single, there should be almost no reason for you to not search in other cities or other states for a job. Every city and every state kind of has their own economy, and certain cities and certain states are booming right now, while other cities and states are in decline. So be open-minded and start searching in some of those cities where things are growing, and be open to the idea of moving to a place where the economy is strong. Plus, it's really exciting to move to a new city, and it's good for you to spread your wings a little bit. Okay, it's time to take action. Find all the places you want to work and write down why you want to work there. And when you go to apply, like I said, apply with intention and apply with passion. As you're finding the jobs that you're interested in, I recommend maybe starting a spreadsheet or some note just to keep track of progress with each company and who you've talked to and maybe some of the relationships that you've built, because you don't want to lose track of what you're doing and like some of your communications with each company while you go through this process. Go out to the user groups, go to the conferencing events, meet new people, ask if they're hiring. Like I always say, nothing's going to change unless you take action. So take action, find your job, and stay tuned to my next video where I'm going to talk to you about how to interview like a pro. Give me some likes, subscribe to my channel. I hope you like what I'm doing here. Please give me some comments down below. I really want to hear more about what you want to talk about next, and I'll see you in the next video.